Let's go on with our next segment, which is talking about Nyck de Vries and Daniel Ricciardo at AlphaTauri. So we know recently Daniel Ricciardo has had a seat fitting at AlphaTauri as part of his general reserve driver role at Red Bull. Sounds a bit odd given he's Red Bull's reserve rather than AlphaTauri's reserve, although it is believed that a seat fitting at AlphaTauri for a Red Bull reserve is actually fairly common. So this doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary, but given the circumstances that Nyck de Vries has started this season, it has caught a bit of wind in terms of F1 media. Sam, as Nyck de Vries' biggest fan, do you think this adds some more pressure onto him?
I think as a racing driver, I don't think it does. I don't think he's looking at it. I don't think he's concerned by it, especially if it is considered relatively normal practice internally. I think what it does do is it fuels the public fire. It fuels the rumour mill. It fuels everyone seems to have a little bit of, hope that Daniel Ricciardo makes it back on the grid. And that's no slight on Nyck de Vries, as much as I know I've been kind of public enemy number one for Nyck de Vries recently. I think people care more about Daniel Ricciardo coming back to the grid because of the love for him rather than Nyck de Vries being kicked off early on, And if Nyck de Vries is, the sliding door, so to speak, that, he walks out and Ricciardo walks in, I think a lot of people are very much on board. So I think they've gone, sniffing to try and find any kind of sense of a hint that he could be back within a seat. And don't get me wrong, I know the three of us are all Danny Rick fans and we'd love to see him on the grid, but I actually really think the media are very much looking into this a little bit too much. And I think that after 5 races, people have had just as bad campaigns as Nyck de Vries. It hasn't been good. We're all aware of that. But people have continued to be this bad for longer. And Nyck de Vries was never brought in to be some prodigy child for AlphaTauri. He was always going to be a bit of an outlier as a signing. He was never going to be a long-term signing. He's there to fill a seat and get a job done until, I don't know, someone like Lawson or Iwasa or Dennis Hauger turns up and goes, I'm good enough to fill that seat now. That's really what Nyck de Vries is doing. And Nyck de Vries, in his own mission, is trying to prove to other F1 teams that, hey, when my time is up here, I've proven I'm good enough to come and drive for you. He's not doing that, quite obviously, at the moment, but I believe that's his mission. So, no, I don't think that this suddenly means that, come the Spanish Grand Prix or something, Ricciardo is suddenly driving an AlphaTauri. And if you're being strategic and logical about it, putting Ricciardo in an AlphaTauri mid-season, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's the logical choice to go down. I would go and get Liam Lawson, who's having a bit of a cracker over in, I think, Super Formula, and doing a great job. Stick him in the car and have fun with it and let him bed himself in for half a season before next year comes along. So for me, as much as I'd love to see it, it won't happen, I don't think. I really do think this is a bit illogical, and I think people are just getting their hopes up for the sake of it.
I agree with your point on what Nyck de Vries is there for, and certainly he wasn't brought in as a Max Verstappen-like prodigy, and no one was expecting that. I think that's why his struggles so far this season are more of a concern than they would be if he was filling that prodigy role, because just compare it to, say, Logan Sargent. I feel like Logan Sargent has a bit more leeway in terms of these rookie errors because he is seen as more of a project than, say, Nyck de Vries is. I think Nyck de Vries, many people thought, you bring him in, yes, he might not light the world alight in a few years' time, but he will be solid from very early on in the season and will be able to churn out good results earlier than most rookies would, just based on his age and experience, which isn't happening. So I feel like the pressure is more because he's not performing this early on. I also agree with what you said in terms of, the seat fitting is, in most instances, a non-factor. It's a standard procedure for a reserve driver to do so. And I think it is just rolling into something even more because of the way in which, because of the way in which Nyck de Vries is struggling right now. So it's one of those things, though, that for Nyck de Vries, I hope it doesn't, but it could mentally impact him. It's say you're in a position where you've been out-qualified by a teammate by a tenth of a second. If you're level on points, or if you've out-qualified your teammate more often than you've been out-qualified, that sort of thing doesn't matter at all, doesn't register. But if you are constantly being out-qualified, it can act as a small thing, can just be another added on detriment to your overall psyche and confidence. This feels like it could be the same sort of thing where Nyck de Vries is struggling, wasn't able to, crashed in Miami, crashed multiple times in Baku, seat fitting from Ricciardo has given, a lot of the public more ammo against him. It feels like another thing on top of everything else that's already come before it. And from Daniel Ricciardo's perspective, I know from AlphaTauri's perspective, it might not make sense to put Daniel Ricciardo in the car, but I think Daniel Ricciardo I think it makes sense for him to push at this if it is somewhat of an open door, or even if the door is open just a crack, because Daniel Ricciardo wants to stay relevant within the world of Formula One. Even if his long-term ambition isn't at AlphaTauri, which it shouldn't be, I feel like a short-term, half-a-season stint at AlphaTauri does actually benefit Ricciardo, just to stay in the here and now, to put his driving ability in front of fans and media and sponsors and other teams. Like, bear in mind that Daniel Ricciardo is probably, outside of Lewis Hamilton, the second biggest personality in F1, and he's not even in F1. Like, that's how big of a personality Daniel Ricciardo is. I mean, he was invited to the Met Gala, for goodness sake. But if he's out of F1 for another year, he's not getting that sort of opportunity anymore. So I think it is within his best interests as a brand and as a driver to short-term get into that AlphaTauri seat, which again puts the pressure on Nyck de Vries. I hope Nyck de Vries can rise above what is going on right now and he can overcome these poor performances. But I can understand how it's going to take a lot of inner strength to battle back a lot of these things. What do you think, Harry?
I agree with your points. I think this is done on purpose. I know you've already said that it's standard procedure for the Red Bull reserve driver to have a seat fitting, and I can understand why. But I think this is done. Someone's, I don't know, leaked this, or just,
it's a motivational thing.
Yeah, just
someone internally is, you think, is.
Well, I'm not like conspiracies, but I feel like that's come from somewhere, and it's just a little. It's not a you're gonna lose your seat, Nick, but it's a bit of a stop crashing, Nick.
There's other people here, Nick.
There are other options for us at Red Bull. Daniel Ricciardo's one of them, and whether he actually is a realistic option, I don't know, because you've already mentioned we've got Liam Lawson, who's actually still racing cars at the moment, which Daniel Ricciardo is not doing. So yeah, I just think it's a bit of that. I think it's a little. I'm sure he's putting pressure on himself, absolutely, but I think it's just a nudge in the back of Nyck de Vries' neck.
Do you think it's a good idea for Ricciardo to take that seat, though? I think it's a terrible idea.
For both parties, or...
If I'm talking about Ricciardo, I think this is an awful choice.
But I think I'm with Ben. I think it's not great. And look, if he's going to end up driving half a season in AlphaTauri, he should have taken one of the Haas seat that was probably going to be given to him.
I mean, yeah, that. But also, what if he jumps in that seat? He gets absolutely whooped by Tsunoda, who's in great form. He crashes the car. He will just deplete stock for the sake of, I've got back. His stock is still high right now, right? People love him. It could go down.
But I mean, if that happens to him, that will happen to him anywhere, and his stock will go down next year instead. Like, if he's going to struggle in a team he's already been at, in a reserve driver role that he's been at for half a year, and struggles against, no disrespect to Yuki Tsunoda, he's not going to prosper anywhere, right?
I mean, I don't know. That's my point. My point is, if you gave him a full pre-season, let's say Checo says, I'm retiring at the end of this year, he gets the Red Bull seat in that fantasy world. I think if you gave him a full pre-season, get the car tuned in properly, let him have some input in development, and allow him to actually go into testing, and then build throughout the season, he's not expected to perform at his utmost instantaneously. And I don't think the three of us have the same viewpoint that a lot of casual viewers will view. They see Daniel Ricciardo sitting at AlphaTauri and go, here he comes, it's Daniel Ricciardo, everyone talks about him, everyone loves him, he's going to be great. And he doesn't instantly click, and it's going to take time to develop. And I think people will then go, I've washed my hands with him. He's not what he used to be. Whereas I think if you gave him a full season to build into a role at a team that is more likely out the front, less cars around, less big field trouble to get involved with, I think he can re-establish himself. I just think this is far too risky as an option.
But I think that he had that in McLaren, so I don't. And
he was naff.
And it was naff. So I think he can go. But I think he can go either way. And if he's going to be crap in an AlphaTauri for half a season, then he probably was going to be crap in a better car or a different car for a whole season or 2 seasons. So I do see a point. It's a risk, but for where Ricciardo is, I don't I don't know.
I
What
guess
option he has.
either way on whether Ricciardo would want it or not. Usually, when you're a rookie driver like Nyck de Vries, you've got another rookie driver or an inexperienced driver in the reserve role, right? So there's less pressure there. And you've got to feel for Nyck de Vries that part of the Red Bull reserve program is someone who has won like 8 races, got like 30 podiums, beat Max Verstappen over the course of a full season when they were teammates at Red Bull. Like, normally you don't have that pressure from a reserve driver. Nyck de Vries has got this guy staring down his back. Like, that's...
He also does the big smile, which I imagine at night time is really scary.
Who, Daniel Ricciardo?
Yeah. Not only is he staring down at you, but he's got that really big, lovely, gorgeous grin.
He stares down at you and you're really happy about it.
You're like, oh, good, he's really nice too. Great, it's terrifying. I also think, you know whose judgment I think this looks really bad on? I think Toto Wolff looks really bad right now. Because he advocated for Nyck de Vries for years and years and years. And it was always in the press of, give him a drive, he's my driver, give him a go. He has been the worst driver on the grid by a country mile. And I think maybe the all-seeing Toto Wolff hasn't got a perfect eye.
But for Toto Wolff's perspective, all of the terrible results are coming at his main rival sister team. He's all right.
If he's played the game,
no bad results from Merck.
1,000 IQ plays.
He was thinking years ahead, this guy.
Red Bull playing checkers, Toto's on chess.
on that point, I saw today, and this is getting off topic now, but there's a few things about Logan Sargent and you know a bit of calm needed within his in his camp, but also that Toto Wolff might be trying to, or he's whispering in his old friend James Vowles' ear to give Mick Schumacher.
I did hear that. Yeah,
that's banter.
Schumacher to Williams.
I like the idea. This has happened to Ocon now, and now to De Vries. If he does it a third time, it's like that's his niche now.
That is his niche.
I'm just taking drivers, and I'll get you. Don't you worry.
I'll put you at the back of the grid.
I'll sort you out, son. Don't you worry.
I'll get you an Alpine driver for 46 years that doesn't do anything apart from finish 5th.
Thanks, Toto.
Love you, Toto. Papa Toto.
That's all I ever wanted.
Papa Toto.
I'm hungry like the wolf.
Oh, Papa Toto definitely has potential as a character. Oh, man.
Papa Toto.
Oh, yeah, hello, Papa Toto.
Right, we're going for a break. Sandwiches time.
Get your pumpernickel.